Happy December 1st. Welcome to our 29th online gathering for Synod roster and lay leaders. This monthly gathering is called Coaching for All Seasons and is sponsored by Pacifica Synod Coaches. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dina Ely, and I am the coach coordinator for Pacifica Synod, and I'm one of your facilitators today. Our amazing coaching team has cultivated this monthly gathering for church leaders across the Synod. We hope you find this helpful as you navigate caring ministries in your communities. This is meant to be a time of insight, learning, and it is meant to be a brave space for you to feel capable of safely acknowledging who you are and how you are doing. Before we begin, we want to help you to be comfortable here by centering in prayer. We ask that you make sure your microphone is muted when you are not participating. Please close your eyes and take in 3 slow, deep breaths. And let us pray. Holy One, help me and all who seek you to remove our garments of sorrow and affliction and put on forever your beauty and glory. May we wear robes of your goodness and crowns of your glory, allowing your light to shine through us everywhere we go. Amen. Today, we have the honor of spending time with our Synod Vice President, Nicolette Rohr. Thank you, Nicolette, for your faithful commitment, dedication, and leadership in our Synod. Nicolette will share some of her own journey with contemplative practices and thriving leadership formation. She will lead a practice to encourage us to slow down, connect with God, others, and ourselves this Advent season. Welcome, Nicolette, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Dina, and thank you all of you for being here and for inviting me. I haven't been able to join for a while, but I want to say that this monthly gathering, which at least for me, I think started in the pandemic. That was when I started attending when I was home more often. And this was a really important space for me. And so I'm really thankful to our coaches for creating this space and offering this in the Synod. I am joining you today from the Asilomar Conference Center in Pacific Grove near Monterey. And this is a beautiful space and you can't see it because it's raining. So I'm inside. I thought that I would maybe show you a little bit more where I was. And I'm here for a retreat of the Thriving Leadership Formation Program. And so I'm just stepping away to talk to you a little bit about Thriving Leadership Formation for a moment. Bishop Dave is here as well. And there's leaders from all of the synods in regions 1 and 2 of the ELCA. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about Thriving Leadership Formation before moving into some quiet time and practice with you. Some of you might have heard me talk a little bit about this at Synod Assembly. So I'll just sort of briefly tell you a little part of my story. With Thriving Leadership Formation and kind of with this practice of more contemplation and quiet, which is maybe familiar to a lot of you and is a regular part of your life. And in my experience as a lay person, it was not something that I had a lot of exposure to or training in, certainly, or even really thought about that much. And so that's kind of the idea behind this program, is trying to get some of these spiritual practices and kind of a culture of building in more quiet time to the time that we spend together throughout the church. So Thriving Leadership Formation, which I referred to, is a grant-funded project. Cal Lutheran and Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary, PLTS, received a grant from the Lilly Foundation. And the intent of the grant was to help the church and church leaders thrive by creating spaces for community and contemplation that would lead to a different kind of action and a different kind of culture. The core of the way that Cal Lutheran and PLTS have gone about this is forming small cohorts of church leaders that gather for community and support and journey through a curriculum of 12 spiritual practices. And I will say that in some ways, I think that that whole idea is similar to what the coaches have curated in this space, right? Of bringing people together, just offering a space, offering connection, asking people to share. I think there are some similarities. And so this is another kind of important thing to pay attention to. I first learned about thriving leadership formation in early 2020, so you can keep that timeline in your mind. I gathered with leaders from Pacifica Synod, Pastor Laura Martin, Pastor Kim Krogstad, and other leaders throughout regions 1 and 2 to be trained to lead one of these cohorts that I just mentioned. That was a strange thing for me to do. I was sort of going outside of my comfort zone in going to that training and kind of like trying to figure out what this was about. And I'm not really sure like exactly why I did it. And what's more, that it was actually going way out of my comfort zone because it was really different than I even expected. And so my story, I guess, was just that there was some kind of nudge that the way that I read this sort of, identifying this issue of people feeling burnt out and isolated, offering to create a space where people were more connected and where there was a spiritual grounding to all the work that we did as the church. That resonated with me. And I responded to all of that and to this desire really that we wanted the church to thrive and that we wanted leaders to be sort of equipped and comforted and nourished as they led. So when I first, I drove to the training, it was an in-person training, February of 2020. It was in Malibu. I had all these questions and like ideas running through my mind. I didn't really get there was all this language about spiritual practices and contemplation. I didn't really know like exactly what all of that meant. I didn't have a lot of a framework for it. So I was more thinking like, oh, there's like there's these problems, right? And I want to be part of the solution and I want to connect with these other people. And so I'm like, driving and I had all these, this is what I'm going to say. And I want to talk about this and I want to talk about that. And then when I got there, we spent so much time in just quiet. We spent so much time just really sitting and reflecting, being sort of ask questions and being quiet, listening to one another. And that was unexpected for me. A lot of the length of silence, the practice of saying, listen to somebody and you don't need to respond. You don't need to say anything, right? There were just sort of all of these different things that were kind of new to me and ended up being sort of, really important to me as well. We did form a community, the people who were there a few weeks before the whole world changed, but a lot of the time that we spent together was really quiet time where we were sort of in our own prayers and practices. And all those things that I had driven up there thinking about all these things I wanted to say, right, that all kind of drifted away. And so my learning partly was, I could have my long to-do list and all the things that I wanted to say and all the things that I thought were problems and what I thought the solutions were. And there was time and space for that, but that I also needed to spend more time being quiet myself and making time and space to connect with God and with other people and with myself. Some of you are probably familiar with Father Richard Rohr. I'm not related to him at all. People ask me that. But he has the Center for Action and Contemplation. And the story goes, right, that he was asked to sort of pick which part of, action or contemplation, like what's the most important thing, or which is more important. And he said that the most important part of that title was "and." The most important thing was that it was action and contemplation. And so the perfect, the clearest indication of that, right, is the life of Jesus. Jesus acted in the world, but he also said, go away to a quiet place all by yourself. And he spent regular time in contemplation as part of his ministry. And so how we all do that, right, varies. How we all do that looks different, what works for different people, and whether it's mornings or evenings, or periods of time within busy stretches of a contemplative weekend within a busy month. However all of that looks, right, for each person is different. But the spiritual practices that are part of thriving leadership formation are intended to just remind us of that. And to encourage us to take these sort of steps towards carving out more time and space, and also more mindfulness and intention. The 12 spiritual practices that are part of the curriculum are, many of them, very ancient. Many of them are, they're very simple in a lot of ways, although sometimes simple is complicated. And the idea is that there's a kind of toolbox of things that you can draw upon. And that's why I think that word practice is important, right? Why we think about spiritual practices like we might think about a yoga practice or practicing an instrument, that we sort of have to practice some of these ways of grounding and connecting ourselves, and be intentional about that. Again, I know that many of you have your own practices and a lot of experience with spiritual practices or contemplation. And again, it sort of has been my observation as a layperson and connecting with a lot of lay people through this program as well, that it isn't something that we necessarily have had as much exposure to, or thought about as much, or see as sort of part of our faith communities in every instance, right? It might be something you do over here. It's not always something that we do together in the life of our church. But I think that for all of us, it can be helpful to both carve out regular time and space to do these things that we might find hard to do on our own. I know for me, it can sometimes be difficult to stick to it or to do it on my own. So having this sort of the idea of meeting, having a regular time and space has helped. And then again, it's sort of that toolbox thing, right? So that the more that I do it, then I can also find these, sort of in my own mind, or in a busy day, right, sort of draw on some of these moments or practices. Once again, I think these are all kind of simple notions, right? Reflect on your day, reflect on a moment, reflect on a piece of scripture, think of someone else with intention. But sometimes we have to work on things that are simple too. And, this week at this retreat that I'm at, and in these gatherings, we spend all this time talking about we want to do this and what's wrong and what could be. And those are important questions, right? Like we have to understand, we have to imagine. But along the way, right, we want to be tending to ourselves and our spirits. And maybe part of that sort of next step is recognizing that it's not always, right, a new program or a concept or a system, right, that's gonna, come along, or it won't be, right, if we discount that grounding of being connected and spending time in contemplation. All right, so I thought that we would just spend a little bit of time in quiet together, and I'll guide you through sort of a brief practice, and then we'll spend a little bit of time maybe reflecting on our experiences of it, and we'll close with sort of prayer and think about leading us into Advent. Now I guess we're in, what is today's Thursday? So we're a few days into Advent, but we were talking as this was starting about the fact that it was December 1st. And that's a sort of exciting thing. And then I think for many of us, I'll just speak for myself, right? But there was a little bit that I was like, oh, it's December 1st, you know? And that doesn't come from my Advent journey, right? But it comes from, you know, my life in this time and place, right? That I thought, oh my gosh, there's so many things I have to do. It's December 1st. And so that's the point, right? So let's draw back. Let's draw back from
Do you
that
love it?
a little bit. Okay. So again, you know, I think we want to be sure that we're intentional about that time, especially in this season. Advent is a time of waiting and expectation. And in our culture, right, it can be a busy and a stressful season. And I think that in a way, all of those themes are common in this part of the life of the church. A lot of us feel like we're waiting, not just in Advent. We're waiting to know, like, what's next. Are people going to come? Who will our pastor be? Can we pay our bills? How will our story go? And we worry about those things, and God invites us into wonder, right? Our worries are normal, but I love in the scripture that we hear around this time of year. The scripture says, right, Mary pondered these things in her heart. And so our time together, right, is designed to wonder and ponder and pray. And so I hope that you'll have a few moments of maybe peace and quiet and connection today, and that you might, right, sort of return later in the season or another time to thinking about sort of any of this. All right, so I've talked for a while. Let's be sure that we're sort of feeling comfortable wherever you are in your space. Maybe sometimes I need to be sure that I put my feet on the ground and feel where I am. You might want to roll your shoulders or just shift around in your seat to get comfortable. Try to let go of any tension that you might be feeling in your body. Maybe you need to sort of shake a little bit or relax your jaw. Your jaw's clenched. If you feel comfortable, you can sort of quiet your eyelids at any point. You can close your eyes or just sort of start to, sometimes, you know, our eyes can kind of carry a lot of, and so sometimes just starting to relax, beginning with our eyelids can help. Let's just take a moment to withdraw from this busyness. It's the middle of the day, right? For many of us, you might have had a busy morning. And if you feel comfortable, you can sort of start to relax into letting go of sort of the stuff that was happening this morning, the stuff that might be happening afterwards. This is a midday prayer. We break from the doings of our day and make space to notice you. You are always with us in surprising guises. Jesus of the flesh, we meet you in worker and friend, stranger and pilgrim, the needy and the needed, the questioner and questioned. So when we meet you, may we deepen trust, deepen life, deepen justice, and deepen joy. And when you meet us, help us approach our activities with presence and power, with love and humility, with courage and dignity. Amen. I want to take just a moment to invite us to kind of check in. And by that, I just mean, let's sort of see how we are, and how you come to this space. And today I would just invite you to add to the chat, if you choose, a word, a phrase, an image, something that sort of tells us what you bring today and how you're coming to this space. And you can add that to the chat. One of the reasons why I sort of encourage us to check in with each other in the spaces where we are sometimes, especially when we're on Zoom, and we're just seeing, right? We in any case, we don't always see all of the story that somebody brings, right? But especially on Zoom, right? We just see a little box. And so if we want to be in a space with one another, it can be important to sort of think about, okay, who's here and what are they bringing? And so the other reason I think it's important, right, is that sometimes it encourages us to check in with ourselves. And I know I experienced that in this gathering of coaches, right? Of someone saying, well, how are you? Right? When we went into some sort of breakout space, and I was like, let me think about it. And so that's one thing that can be important. And these are totally, I'm seeing, and I see a couple. Yeah, these are all the things that probably many of us are feeling when I explained how I felt about December 1st, rushed, anticipating, too many details, busy, one thing after another, in between, anticipation. And so reading all these things, right, I want to both thank you for showing up to this gathering, right, on a busy day where you were doing all kinds of other stuff, and affirm that you did that, right, because I think that sometimes that gathering in a space like this is like, maybe, I want to be with these other people. And so thank you for doing that. Discerning, Becky's is great too. Lots of stuff. Yeah. And so thanks for showing up and for sharing all of that, and just acknowledging, right, that we come with a lot. And we might have these things to say at any time of the year or church year, and maybe we feel some of these things in a heightened way right now, for any number of reasons, whether it's holiday preparations or preparing for a meeting or preparing for Sunday. We come with a lot, and we often experience a lot of these different feelings of feeling rushed or in between. And sometimes those are feelings of disconnection, right? Lots of times during our day, we might encounter people or situations that maybe they irritate us, or we start to feel exhausted, or we feel sort of despair. And especially when we're caught up in the midst of our own busyness, right, that we sort of, become disconnected from ourselves and from God in those moments. We often, especially those of us in the church, might be trying really hard to be compassionate to other people and to do the things that we need to do. And then we also forget to be compassionate towards ourselves. And we want our communities in Christ to be places that are connected, and to be places where we can be connected to our core selves. But we know that there's these pressures and frustrations and irritations too, that can just sort of distort, our true selves and leave us feeling alienated or overwhelmed, or we have, these inner voices that are in our heads all the time. We want, right, our core self to be connected to God, and to not discount all of these things, right? We're gonna probably still get irritated sometimes, right? And we're probably still gonna have busy days. But right, to be more aware of those things, so that we can kind of maintain our rootedness. And so this practice is called a prayer of welcoming presence. And it's really sort of based on that idea, right? That there's all this stuff that we encounter, and there's this stuff that's kind of coming at us. And we want to be sort of more able to engage in the practice of noticing and becoming aware of those movements within us, acknowledging, but not being overwhelmed by some of those feelings. So once again, if you need to, I kind of see people shift around. So if you need to, I'll just remind you again to be comfortable, to sort of sit in a way that's comfortable, and take some deep breaths and just kind of ease into a silence. Ground yourself in what might be like a inner prayer chamber for you, a space that feels safe, a peaceful space, a place where you feel grace. You might imagine like a specific place, a favorite place, a real place, or an imaginary place. Something that feels welcoming and sacred. Maybe it's a warm, comfortable living room, or a quiet chapel, a meadow, or a warm cabin. Any place that feels soothing and centering and filled with the promise of sacred presence. You can just enter into that space in your mind. And as you enter into that space, there might be intrusions that kind of disrupt the quiet. Maybe you think of something that you were supposed to do or something that you need to do. You have an inner voice, some kind of thought that just sort of disrupts the inner calm that you might be trying to find. Don't judge yourself for any of those things entering your mind. Just acknowledge them. You might even think of those thoughts as guests there with you in your quiet place or your prayer space. You might refer to what's there with you in the third person. Instead of saying, I'm stressed, maybe stress is here. Stress is present right now. Maybe I see you, anxiety. I know that you're here. You're present here with me. whatever it is that you feel is with you, you might think of it as an image, like something like barbed wire or a hive of bees, some kind of person or creature that might help you sort of visualize it in a space. I'm here in this comfortable space, but there's this hive of bees, and it's there. For just another minute, you can just sort of pay attention to what's going on in your mind and acknowledge the presence of anything that might feel like an intrusion, but just allow it to be there with you and recognize it. It's not you, it's with you right now. Try to return to a sense of God's peace and gentle presence. You might use your breath to still and center you. When you notice an interruption again in the state of relaxed presence, you can welcome and receive that interruption as a guest and just let it be. At some point, you might invite Jesus to come and be with you in that space and to be with whatever guests are there. How does Jesus meet the anxiety or the stress that's in the room? Welcome Jesus into all of it. before you surface from your sacred space, notice any peace or grace that's been in the space with you. And allow that to flow through your entire body. You can feel it move from your head all through your body, going from that space in your mind into your inner world and being carried with you in your body. And as we prepare to return to this space, take a moment to just think about if there's any invitation from the Spirit for how you might allow your sacred room, your welcome guest, any part of this prayer to extend into your daily life. And when you're ready, you can slowly turn your attention back to this gathering. We'll just take a few moments to kind of share anything that surfaced, any part of our experience. I think we're a okay size that we can share in this space. Okay. And you can share at whatever level feels comfortable to you. You don't have to tell us your intrusion, what was there with you, but you certainly can. Or you can talk about the practice or experience, or maybe what the invitation might be. And you can always choose not to share as well. Is there anything that surfaced that anybody would like to share, either unmuting or in the chat?
Actually, I have a question. The clarification was, you said when those thoughts come and consider them as, I did not get it. Did you say debts or deaths?
Guests.
Death.
I'm going to put it in the guests. I could see how that would be confusing.
Oh, well, it may be my listening as well. Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
She's totally different. Thank you.
I'll share.
Thanks, Pastor Jennifer.
So my space was along the beach. It's a little too cold right now for being in the water, but I was imagining myself bundled up walking along the beach. And but my intrusion, I imagined it as boiling water. So like a pot of boiling water. And when Jesus came and walked on the beach with me, he turned the pot of boiling water into a pot of mulled wine, which I think is
That's
seasonally.
what he does, right?
And so like the anxiety and stuff that was the boiling pot turned into joviality and something to share and something festive and joyful. And so that was very comforting.
Thanks, Pastor Jennifer.
For me, it's fast forward. For me, when you said invite Jesus into that space, sometimes that was helpful because, as I said, I'm so rushed, and sometimes working for Jesus can be so busy that I leave Jesus. So I intentionally inviting, that was helpful. Thank you. I felt like, okay, don't need to be in control. Yeah.
Thanks, Pastor JP.
I'll share. I thought of several different places that could be sacred places, but I realized that the common denominator was my husband being in them with me at all the places. We just have a very special connection since we've met. And so that was a fun thing. And the intrusion was a wall, but I didn't know what that wall was. I didn't know if it was like a narrowing, pushing in, or a pushing down on top. But I realized what it was is that I'm moving a wall brick by brick. And it's a huge wall, and there's so many pieces, and it's taking forever. And I'm in the middle of moving. For those of you who don't know me, my husband is taking a new call, and there's so many pieces to that. But then the cool thing was that my sacred space is my husband. He was there too, moving pieces. And then when Jesus came into it, the first thing he did was come over and rub my shoulders and hug me and say, "You're doing great. Like, don't worry." And then he started moving bricks with us as well. And so then the excitement at the end part was, it'll get done. All the pieces will be figured out and moved. And I'm not alone in that. And I've never felt alone, and it's not like a revelation. It's just encouraging to have an image to put with the feelings that have been recently. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
I'll go. I started out at the beach because that's where I find the easiest place to connect with God and just pull myself away from the daily stuff. But I didn't get much into the intrusion because there was really an intrusion, and don't let Tom know I said that about him. But anyway, Pastor Tom came in and had something for me to do. So like that whole thing, like, and those, I think probably that represented the intrusion, is all the little things there are to do. Even when you think you've gotten a handle on things, there's more stuff. So, and I didn't get a chance to like jump back in before we ended, but so I'll have to do this again and picture Jesus with that. But I would think those are the intrusions, like just when you think you've got it kind of settled, it's like, oh no, one more thing. So those are the things I struggle with, is how to set those aside and find that place.
I found it interesting that my Qigong practice has given me the ability to center in my heart space quite readily. And so with breathing, that was easy to achieve. My space that I go to in my mind is actually a space I haven't been to in decades, because it's back in Wisconsin where I used to live. And I went there a number of times. It was in the University Arboretum, sitting under a huge oak tree looking out on a meadow. And I was there in all seasons of the year as well. And that still is my place that I go to. And I loved the imagery of the beehive, because that's how my day has felt yesterday and today, constant buzzing and bees flying in all directions. And when you said about inviting Jesus, my mind goes to his saying, I will send you the comforter. So for me, it was the Spirit who came. It's the Spirit who walks with me. And that was very helpful.
Thank you, Carol. Maybe right now, we could take a minute to think, in light of what you experienced, maybe what you've heard other people share. Sometimes that is why the sharing is important, because it kind of helps us process it too. Think about if there's any step or practice or call to action or idea that surfaces based on the last few minutes. The end of our practice was thinking about, is there any invitation about how we could carry this out into our lives? And so let's just return to that for just a moment and think about how we might carry this later today, this weekend, next week.
It's reminding me that something I have sitting on my table is an Advent devotion booklet, and it's sitting right where I put it on Sunday. And so I'm thinking that if I just put it on my bedside table when I'm ready to go to sleep at night, I could pick that up and have a few moments with it.
Yeah, thanks, Carol.
I chuckled, Carol, because I had the same thought. I got an Advent devotional on Sunday, and it's still sitting on the edge of the counter with its pretty cover. So when we're done with this call, I'm going to go read my Advent devotional.
That sounds good. Thank you, Joanne.
Mine isn't quite so concrete, but with the image of my boiling anxiety pot turning into mulled wine, I feel an invitation to channel the energy that I'm putting into anxiety into being playful and joyful and generous.
Thanks, Pastor Jennifer.
I think for me, it's finding space in my day, even if it's just 5 minutes, that unlike doing this at work, it doesn't have as much of a potential. I can set myself up for success, and just that space, even if I don't do well at things right before bed, because usually I fall asleep before I get them done. But maybe before I flip on the TV in the evening or something, just to make that space and make it as accessible and quiet as I can. And to do it intentionally, not just wait, because if I wait for it to occur, it just doesn't.
Thanks, Terry. Anyone else?
I'll be working on moving bricks
Yeah.
and being
Jesus is
open,
helping.
being open and creative to those who want to help. This is not an invitation. I'm not trying to get support at the moment.
Oh yeah, well, I'll be there.
Yeah. But just the next thing, just keep going, the next thing.
Thanks, Becky. I would offer a couple of ideas that you might think about. One is finding the space. Sometimes when all the stress is coming, right? Going to I mean, yes, go to the beach, or in your mind, find that centering space, or the cozy cabin, or the place where you feel warmth, even if it's for 10 seconds, right? It might help ground and center you. I also, the idea of welcoming presence, right? Maybe say, it's not that I'm stressed and anxious and that's who I am, right? It's that there's stress here right now. And then finally, always, right? Picture Jesus in that space, picture Jesus with you wherever you are, and think about what he offers or what he would do. Maybe he's there to help. Maybe he would carry your burden. So anyway, if those things, resonate at all, then I would just invite you to think about, both thinking about the space and the feelings, and just acknowledging them, and inviting Jesus into all of it, both the hive of bees, and the quiet place. I want to respect our time, and our coaches probably have some little announcements about what's next. And so let's take one more or shift around. And then I've been just sharing these different poems from this book for the past few days on Zooms. This is a book called Kneeling in Bethlehem, with poems for this season. And so I'll just share one with you. This is called To Listen, to Look. Is it all sewn up, my life? Is it at this point so predictable, so orderly, so neat, so arranged, so right, that I don't have time or space for listening for the rustle of angels' wings or running to stables to see a baby? Could this be what he meant when he said, listen, those who have ears to hear, look, those who have eyes to see? Oh God, give me the humbleness of those shepherds who saw in the cold December darkness the coming of light, the advent of love. Dina or Sarah, do you want to say something, or should we close in prayer, or you want to say something first? And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We do want to share with you our intentions for our January gathering. We have invited Deacon and Coach Tammy Devine to come and speak with us at that gathering. Tammy's doing a lot of different work, but one of the things she does is she teaches discipleship coaching, which is a level up from our standard training that we go through as coaches in this ministry. And one of the things she's going to talk about is how you as rostered leaders or lay leaders in our synod can use a discipleship level 2 trained coach to help you in that specific learning track or mission outreach. So we look forward to that. That is January 5th, the first Thursday in January at the same time, same place. But you have to register for the link. So don't forget that important step. And yeah, we just invite you all to keep coming back here. And if you find value in this space, to invite others to join you the next time you come. Thanks so much for being here. And Nicolette, if you want to close with prayer, that would be lovely. Or if not, I have something too.
Oh, well, really quick, I want to lift up Pastor Jennifer Shaw. There's multiple Pastor Jennifers here. But there's a comment in the chat about like I explained at the beginning about thriving leadership cohorts. There's the Pacifica Synod cohort that is forming, led by Pastor Jennifer Shaw, starting in January. And so that schedule is in the chat, and you can email Pastor Jen for more information. But Sarah, you go ahead with what you have prepared.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. And Pastor Jennifer, thank you for sharing that invitation. That's lovely. Thanks so much. I'm going to share an Advent devotion for us all. Let me just share my screen. Hold on. Here we go. I'm going to make it prettier. Can you see that? I hope. Okay. This drawing is from Monastery Candy, a shop of treats made and sold by the contemplative nuns of Our Lady of the Mississippi Abbey in Dubuque, Iowa. This was one of the designs for their annual Christmas card. If you take a few minutes to really look at this picture, you will notice it is a picture of Eve and Mary. Seeing them together doesn't really make sense because they aren't even mentioned in the same book of the Bible. But first, let's take a look at Eve, the despair on her face. It is full of shame and at the knowledge of sin. The forbidden fruit is still in the clutches of her hand, and the serpent still with his tight grip coiled around her leg, the same evil that holds so many of us captive today. And her hand is outstretched to Mary, seeking comfort. Sweet Mary, obedient Mary. Could you imagine being a teenager and being told that you would give birth to the Messiah? See the compassion on her face as she gently comforts the ashamed Eve. And that serpent that once held Eve and mankind captive, just like Genesis 3 prophesied, the baby she is carrying will crush the head of the serpent, all because of the one thing that she and Eve have in common: the babe in Mary's womb. Wonderful Counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace, Jesus. Eve and Mary, two women you wouldn't think to talk about in the same sentence, yet two women whose stories are truly woven together from the very beginning. From the fall to glory, let us not forget this Christmas that we are celebrating the beginning of redemption from the fall in the garden so many years ago. The King has come and salvation is here. O death, where is your sting? O hell, where is your victory? The text from the Christmas card reads, "My mother, my daughter, life-giving Eve, do not be ashamed, do not grieve. The former things have passed away. Our God has brought us to a new day. See, I am with child, through whom all will be reconciled. O Eve, my sister, my friend, we will rejoice together forever, life without end. May you share in the Christmas joy of the angels and the saints." Thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank